Okay, good morning. This is Senate Natural Resources and Energy, and it is Tuesday, January 27th, and we are starting the morning talking about S224, which is a bill broadly about lakes. We're joined this morning by Mr. Sterling Castro, the city manager. Very welcome.
Good morning, Chair Watson. How are you?
Good. How are you? And can we
Good.
turn it? Thank you. Okay. And maybe before we get started, if we can go around really quick, so you know who you're talking to.
Great.
Senator Terry Williams from Rutland District.
Obviously, Ann Watson from the Washington District.
Seth Bungars from the Bennington District.
Morning.
Scott Beck from Caledonia District.
Morning.
Morning. So I think I've mentioned to the committee a little bit about the situation that happened in Barrie, but if you'd like to tell us about the story and what your concerns are and anything else you wanted to tell us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Chair. Chair Watson, Vice Chair Williams, and members of the committee. It's really great to be with you this morning. I'm happy to speak today in support of S224. Just by way of background, the Thurman-Dix Reservoir is located in Orange, Vermont, and it provides our drinking water in Barrie City. And its sole purpose is to supply clean, safe water. There's activities that threaten the contaminations of this water source. We spend $2.8 million annually to operate it. And it was built, our water treatment system in Barrie, it was built as a standard facility. It doesn't have the enhancements that other facilities in the state have, like St. Johnsbury. So our facility is not designed, our water treatment system is not designed to remove contaminants introduced by recreation, which could be things, sort of gasoline, benzene, and other substances. So the reason this sort of came up is we have had a situation in Barrie. Which highlights the need for this, which is the Department of Environmental Conservation approved a fishing tournament on the Dix Reservoir. The applicant for that fishing tournament was a New Hampshire resident who's had a history of attempting to access protected reservoirs such as ours in central Vermont for personal use. The city was not notified that this permit had been issued until after the fact. And unfortunately, we had no other choice but to trespass this individual earlier this year at our reservoir because we own all the land around it. And so there is short of parachuting in, there is no legal access to the site if we don't grant it. So the Department of Environmental Conservation acknowledges this. They acknowledge that there's no public access to the reservoir, but it still approved the event. And unfortunately, what this does for Barrie City, it sets up a really avoidable conflict between individuals attempting to access the site, the Dix Reservoir, our police department, who will now have to be deployed to respond to this fishing tournament, and our water treatment staff, who frankly don't sign up for this kind of work, right? They're looking to treat our water and that's it. And now they're going to be in this avoidable situation of having to enforce our property rights. We consider ourselves stewards of this water system, but as we learned, and it was highlighted by this sequence of events, we have no legal authority to prevent an outside recreational use that was approved by the state, even when, as the state acknowledges, there is no legal access to our site short of trespassing on it. As we saw here, a permit was issued even when access required going through our land. So this is why we're really excited about S224. It's and why it's necessary. In looking at this issue, we know that other states like Massachusetts have adopted restrictions on recreational use. We're not trying to do that here. What we're trying to do is let local decision makers weigh in on how to have access to these sites. So, for example, this would be a decision under this bill that the Barrie City Council, those councils are elected by our voters, that Barrie City Council could decide what to do with access to our site. And this is why it's really important for us in Berry City. Our reservoir is relatively small compared to some of the other ones. So for example, Berlin Pond, which supplies Montpelier's drinking water, is about 1.5 billion gallons. Lake Champlain is in the trillions, over 6 trillion gallons. We are a measly 588 million gallons. We are much smaller than many other reservoirs. And so what that means is that we are way more susceptible to contamination than some other reservoirs in the state, right? The little rhyme that my water treatment office employees give me is the solution to pollution is dilution. And at 588 gallons, that's less of a solution for us than it is in Lake Champlain, which is at over 6 trillion. So that combined with the fact that our water treatment facility is a standard facility. It's not designed to take out every contaminant. It's not designed to take out these higher grade contaminants. That's why we are really concerned about what could happen with these increased recreational uses, which are discouraged by associations that say that these activities should be restricted in public water sources. So again, we're very, what we want to do is have a little bit more say locally about what happens with our reservoir. The conditions of our reservoir may be very different than the conditions of other reservoirs. As I mentioned, the size of it is one really big mitigating factor. The condition of our plant is another mitigating factor. And that's why we're here in support of this bill. And I'm happy to answer questions and sort of explain why we're so supportive of this legislation.
Thank you so much. Any questions from the committee? Oh, yes, go ahead.
So you don't have the same water purification system as Montpelier, then? You have your own?
We have our own water treatment plant, yes.
And the feed comes from, is it Berlin Pond?
Our water comes from Dick's Reservoir. Montpelier is served by Berlin Pond. We're served by Dick's Reservoir.
What would your plan be? Would it be to fence that off? So that sportsmen couldn't use it, or?
No, our issue really is that we would want to have a little bit more say about widespread, larger events such as this fishing tournament that was permitted without our say. So for many years, Berry City has allowed, we have a couple of access points for fishing. We're very supportive of that. We have for many years issued hunting permits. We own a lot of land around our reservoir for source protection. So we've been very supportive of sportsmen's activities on the Dicks in terms of fishing. We don't allow use of watercraft or swimming, but fishing, we have 2 access points that we would love to have people access and use. As I said, we also allow hunting and the land surrounding the Dicks Reservoir by permit. So we're very supportive of that. Our concern is a large-scale fishing tournament, which could introduce a whole set of other issues and contaminants, which provides less ability for the city to sort of monitor and regulate what is being brought in. The site is really not suitable for such a large-scale event like that. We would, gladly continue to have our 2 fishing point accesses, which I hear from residents, not just residents of Berry, but people who live in Orange, Vermont, adjacent to the reservoir, that they love to take advantage of. And we're happy to continue that. We just would rather not have a large scale event on the property because it's so susceptible to potential contamination.
So how many acres is that reservoir?
Oh, Senator, I don't have the acreage right off the top of my head. I could pull it up here quick while we're talking. But I have the gallons are 588 gallons. It's a pretty shallow reservoir. I don't have the acreage right at my fingertips at the moment. We do own, in addition to, as I mentioned, in addition to the reservoir itself, we own quite a bit of land right around it as well for source protection.
Okay, you own right up to the water line?
Yes, we own entirely. We own all of the water. The water's edge is owned by Berry City, correct? So that's why, short of parachuting in, people would be trespassing on our land if we deemed not to want to have the fishing tournament there, which creates this really avoidable conflict, which I don't like putting, pitting police officers and water treatment staff, against anglers for a situation that could have been avoided. We own all that land. They would, like I said, unless they parachute in, they would be crossing it to go to this fishing tournament.
So can you tell me more about the fishing tournament? Was it people fishing from shore? Were there boats involved?
I believe it's mostly fishing from shore. There's been two tournaments that were permitted by the Agency of Natural Resources, by DEC. One is the one coming up in February is a fishing tournament. So they'll be out on out in the lake, on the reservoir. And then there's one in June, which will be primarily from shore. So we do know that this individual who has sort of made it a point to access these sites has been trespassed for using watercraft on our reservoir. So we wouldn't put that beyond what might be happening at the fishing tournament as well.
The reason I asked about the acreage, I believe if it's less than 40, if it's 40 acres or less, they're not allowed to have motorized boats on it anyway, other than electric. So
Yeah.
what about the water that downstream from the reservoir? Maybe you plan on keeping people out of there too?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we have a lower reservoir that feeds to our water plant, and that is even more susceptible to contamination as well. So we have the Dix Reservoir, and then we have a reservoir right at a sort of a holding area right next to the water plant, which is the intake section. And yeah, those are all on Berry City property. And yeah, the idea is that those should not be used for recreational purposes. That is the point at which the water is entering our facility for treatment and then distribution into the city.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Other questions? One of the things that you hadn't mentioned was the potential for aquatic invasive species, and the one that I'm thinking of particularly is zebra mussels.
Yes.
And with that as a risk, one possibility is that the intake pipes could get clogged with zebra mussels.
Right.
Do you have any sense of, like, if you were to have to replace an intake pipe that was clogged with zebra mussels, do you have any sense of like how much that might cost the city?
I mean, we haven't scoped anything like that out, but when we look at major repair projects at the plant, anything that we do at our plant at this point is going to hit triple digits, 6 digits. I'm sorry. There's going to be, they're going to be big numbers. I do know, Senator, that when I spoke to the designer of our water treatment plant in preparation for this testimony, and what he shared with me was that to upgrade our plant to be, to not be a standard plant, to have the sort of the advanced treatment capabilities, we'd be looking at $3 to $5 million in upgrades to the plant to do that, right? And so if we're looking at situations where there's increased use and contact with the water and contamination risk, that's what we'd be looking at. And that makes sense. My understanding is, speaking with that same designer of the plant, that when St. Johnsbury was building their plant, they were looking at a $6 million option for a standard plant and a $10 million option for a more advanced plant. They went with the $10 million option, but that gives you the same price range, right? You're looking at a couple $1 million in order to have the enhanced treatment capabilities that you would need with more access. So, and yeah, so there's always, and this is like I said, anything we do at these plants is very cost prohibitive. And certainly wouldn't want to be the area. We have a lot of infrastructure to upgrade anyway. If we could avoid, having to upgrade something caused by, infestation of zebra mussels, that's better. We have a lot of other infrastructure that needs upgrading, now, even without, creating this problem.
And then one other thing I wanted to ask about was one of the provisions in the bill just makes it really explicit that in whatever delegation agreement exists in an MOU, that the city would not be permitted to be more lax than the state. You'd have to be at least as strict as the state, but you could go beyond that. And you're okay with that as a provision?
Yeah, we're very comfortable with that, and as I've mentioned, we're not against limited recreational use. The use we've allowed is we believe sort of tangential with the risk that we want to take, right, based on the treatment plant that we have. So as I said, having access points for fishing, which is sort of gets light use anyway, we're fine with that. Where we have issues is when we're having the more broad scale use, which is harder to regulate, harder to monitor. So we're very comfortable with the provisions of the bill you mentioned.
Yeah, and we have another question here.
Thank you. Hi, Nick. Thanks for your testimony.
Hi, Senator.
It's nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm sorry I missed the very beginning, but I'm curious about the fishing tournament issue. Was there a fishing tournament on the lake in question?
No, it's been permitted by so the Department of Environmental Conservation approved an application permit for the fishing tournament. The first one is, I believe, the first weekend in February, which will be an ice fishing tournament. The second one is scheduled in mid to late June, which will be just a regular fishing tournament. So they are coming up, and what we have done is we have our water treatment staff will be on site. We have increased signage on the property. We have assigned police department shifts because we have no recourse other than to trespass people because we don't want a fishing tournament on this site. There's 800 lakes in Vermont that are suitable for this type of recreational activity, and so we think that a relatively shallow, relatively small reservoir that is susceptible to contamination maybe shouldn't be one of those sites. And so so we're going to have we're unfortunately going to have some possible confrontations between people trying to access this tournament and us trespassing them, and completely avoidable. If we had a little bit of say, or if the Agency of Natural Resources had acknowledged and maybe been a little bit more thoughtful, knowing that there is no access to our site absent crossing private property.
Okay, so when they were permitting the fishing tournaments, did they check in with you at all? Did you have an opportunity, the city have an opportunity to state your opinion in the process? And
we were notified after they had sort of gone down the approval route. We told them that once we learned that this was headed down the approval route, I reached out to the commissioner and I explained, this is an individual who has a history of doing this. This was the individual who brought litigation against Berlin Pond. And Berlin Pond is a separate situation because the city of Montpelier doesn't own all the land around Berlin Pond, so there is a little bit more legal issue there. We own all the land around our reservoir, so we do have the ability to trespass people if we wanted to. And so this was my point to the commissioner, which is you're sort of approving an application under false pretenses. You're setting up a situation for conflict because that we're going to trespass people. You shouldn't really be inviting them to this event that is just going to sort of be a confrontation. That's not serving anyone's interest.
yeah.
And so we made our, once we knew this was sort of on their approval docket, and they sent it to us for awareness, I reached out to the commissioner, I made these points. Their argument was, well, technically they could parachute in, so we have to approve it. And, realistically,
Seriously?
it's not going to happen. Right?
Did they actually say that to you? The parachute?
Yeah, they could enter, they could come down onto the water, and so they could access it that way. And, that's just not realistic. And I'm not in the business of putting my staff in difficult situations, but unfortunately we have to, because this is sort of created a conflict. It's unfortunate because my point was, why approve an application that and they acknowledge doesn't really provide for for access to this site, and they did it anyhow.
Okay, well, thank you, that's helpful, and I guess I just have a question now for the chair.
Yeah.
And maybe this is more, the fishing tournament stuff, there's language added about an application. So, and identifying access points, but I'm wondering if, and when we have the commissioner in again, is there anything in the access, do you know if there's anything in the process about checking in with the landowners around?
I don't think that there is, but it's occurring to me through this conversation, and there's always multiple ways to solve a problem. And I mean, this is something that we can chat about more, but it's occurring to me too, that another way to get at the same thing would be potentially to, as a part of if the problem is just fishing tournaments, if that's the problem we're trying to solve. For the fishing tournament application, could you, for. I pushed all of us. It's all good. All good. You know, could we say for a body of water entirely owned by a municipality? And if
Well,
there's
I
any
mean, that's
questions,
one
we
way, but
have to-
they're also just, general, like. Notifying landowner or.
Yes.
Getting landowner or approval and also
Mhm.
specifically if there's. If it's drinking water, I don't know, it
Yes,
seems like
yes.
there could be a way to modify the application process to make sure we don't end up. And also compensating for any security costs or anything, because it sounds like you're gonna spend city
Yeah.
resources on this, and we all know that Barry doesn't have extra money lying around for that.
Absolutely. These are all going to be overtime shifts. These are all unionized staff. They're all overtime shifts. And we're short 3 officers right now. We're going to have to fill these shifts in possibly with the chief and the deputy chief if we don't get people to fill it in. But and our water treatment staff, this is going to be a weekend event, so they're going to be coming in on overtime as
Yeah.
well. So it's just an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for fishing tournaments. I fish and I think they're kind of cool, but we want to make sure they're on the right lakes and with the right conditions.
Fair enough. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much. It's so helpful to hear from you about the problem that seems entirely avoidable. So hopefully we can resolve that.
Well, thank you, Chair, and members of the committee. And I'll just leave it with, we, as I mentioned a couple of times, we've been very supportive of sportsmen and sportswomen on our land. As I said, with hunting permits, with the 2 access points for fishing, it's sort of these bigger events that we're concerned about. And we completely recognize that, the concerns that we have with our relatively smaller reservoir may not be suitable to other bigger reservoirs, and that's okay. But, we're certainly concerned about what it might mean for us. And once that toothpaste is out of the tube with contamination in the water, it's hard to put back in. I mean, I think when you all think of Flint, Michigan, we all think of the water crisis. I think, water is one of the things we need to really be able to trust. And that's really what we're trying to do. So I appreciate your time and the questions. I really enjoyed speaking with you all today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. Take care.
See you. Okay, all right, so we are gonna be switching topics to S-174, which is the Green Bank study. And so we're gonna hear from a couple people with that. We're gonna start with Mr. Delia from the Vermont Bankers Association. Welcome.
Thank you.
And just to put some context out there, I'm anticipating that we are gonna be, as a committee, we're gonna be done before 12 today. A little bit of a gap, but I also have a meeting I need to go to, so we're gonna be.
Fully supportive of time.
Okay, and so with that, Delia, welcome.
Sure. Good morning. For the record, Chris Delia, President of the Vermont Bankers Association. Thank you for the opportunity to come in and testify on S-174. I'm going to try and condense my comments because there's so much to talk about around this type of issue. First, let me say I've been with the association for 23 years, and 16 of those years I've dealt with the state bank or green bank discussions in the state house, in the treasurer's office, in other locations. So it's a topic I'm quite familiar with. It has been looked at and implemented in a handful of other states in different forms, whether it's a standalone organization or whether it utilizes existing entities that are in that particular state. I want to be consistent, but I'll caveat that consistency. We do not support the general concepts of a state bank or green bank as a standalone entity. However, this is a study. And quite honestly, I think we could save you money on doing the study through conversations with the partners that already exist in Vermont. And in fact, I know those conversations have occurred over the years. When you look at the private sector, whether it's my folks, whether it's the credit unions, you look at the public partners that we work with, whether it's Vermont Economic Development Authority, VHFA, Vermont Housing Finance, the bond bank, there are players and practitioners that work very closely together in partnership. And I should add the treasurer's office with 10% in Vermont to, I think, get at the issues that you may want to look at or perhaps are concerned with. Capital is often not the issue in the marketplace. It's often the project and the circumstances around that particular project. And when there was funding a few years ago, coming out of COVID, they did the big stimulus bill down in Congress, and there was some energy efficiency fundings that were made available. I can tell you that those partners got together and figured out, is there a way to access and draw those funds down in a manner that's much quicker than trying to stand up an organization, which takes capital, it takes infrastructure, it takes people. And again, even if you're doing the study, you've got to come up with the funding to do that study and support the treasurer's office. I think you can get there without a study. Quite frankly, I think if there's a gap that you folks see or recognize in the market, then direct those parties, as we often do separate from summer studies and so on, to go out and figure it out. And again, I think those partnerships exist in Vermont to do just that. So I don't normally vigorously oppose, and I don't think I'm vigorously opposing studies, but if you've got goals and objectives, I think you can direct people to have those conversations without trying to fund a study.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead. Well, I guess I'm thinking about, particularly with, the private entities that might be involved. I guess I would just say it feels a little unusual that the state would be like, hey, private entity, you need to figure this out for us. If it's like a public or quasi-public entity, which would that include the bond bank?
Sure.
Right, so, it might make some sense to direct them or, a similar kinds of players, but participation of the private sector seems more tricky to say, please participate in this.
Oh, I don't think it is. We do it all the time. We absolutely do. I'll give you a quick example.
Okay.
I was just asked by the Commerce Committee this summer to conduct a study on non-compete agreements. Representing private sector entities. We had a group of people come to the table and have conversations, and we reported back to the Commerce Committee with recommendations. In my opinion, it happens all the time. So while you can't direct our ultimate participation in a program to have as part of the study or part of the conversations, it happens. Absolutely.
But was that a study or was that a report that came out of a bill?
No, that was at the request of the chair and vice chair in a letter to me. Would you please help us on this non-compete bill? So, you
okay.
could say, hey, bond bank, Vita, VHFA, private sector lenders, Farm Credit Bureau. Here's what we've identified for some issues out there. We'd like you guys to get together and have conversations in response to what you would like the group to look at or perceived gaps or whatever it may be.
That's helpful. I mean, I am just also recalling from the treasurer's climate infrastructure report, one of the recommendations was to further study a green bank. And if I recall, I think I'm trying to find it, but I'm having a hard time putting my fingers on it right now. But there was a collaborative letter from a number of lending institutions saying, just direct us to do this, we can figure this out.
Right.
So
That I've highlighted.
yeah, so what you're saying is just go directly to that group to figure it out
Right.
and bypass at least the recommendation from the report to further study it.
Well, I think the treasurer's office is part of that discussion. It's if I go back a long time ago, when we had one of the iterations of the state bank bill, this was at the time that Pierce was treasurer. She got a collaborative group together to have a conversation about the parameters of a concept 10% Vermont. Wasn't a legislative study. This was, okay, we see an issue out there, legislators see an issue out there, let's get together and have that conversation. I think about this because I recognize monies are tight. Every little dollar counts, and I think you can accomplish a task without having to embed it in statute with a formal study, where you gotta come up with money to support it somehow.
Thank you. I think Senator Hardy had.
Yeah, I mean, you basically answered my question, because I was gonna suggest the same thing, that we could do it more informally, and as long as we have the right list of people, and your list is a great list. I would also add maybe the Sustainable Jobs Fund is another partner that would be interested. And I think part of what we could ask for also is what is already out there, because I know that there are a lot of sort of green bank type programs that are out there that already, the bond bank has a couple, the VHFA, I think has, or Vita,
Right.
I get those fees mixed up sometimes, but you know, sort of a list of like, these are things that exist already.
Right.
And these are things that we could do more of.
Yeah, because the goal at the time when the federal money started to flow was, how do we go after that?
Yeah,
And that's when groups like the bond bank or Vita saw opportunities there and stood up a program or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Sometimes under Vita, the legislators directed them to do certain things and expand into certain areas. So I just think there's a different way to accomplish it and achieve the goals that you're looking for.
Okay, and Senator.
No, it's basically the same thing I was gonna say, you know, you got some kind of an idea of what other things are out there, I'd be interested in hearing them.
Yeah, and I will say, when you look at some of the other states that have done this, there's like Connecticut as a standalone green bank, but then you have other states that have created these climate funds, if you will, that are embedded within some state entity or nonprofit entity that's within the state. So there's different ways. But just having researched the state bank, green bank as standalone, you don't have the capacity to do that.
not tiny.
And right, by the time you get it up and running, which will take time, your window of opportunity becomes less narrow. Why not? Again, we felt we can respond more immediate in that partnership approach to what you're trying to accomplish.
Very interesting. Any other comments or questions?
I'm always in the building if you have anything.
Well, I think just sort of thinking out loud, I want to understand this. So one, and the issue, if I'm about this, I don't really focus on this bill now. So we're, the reason that this is in front of us is that these efforts often don't pencil. Because things like historic floodplains don't have an immediate economic return or even calculable.
Yeah.
And so how do we deal with
Sure.
that?
So I'm gonna try and not get in the weeds because if a project doesn't pencil, there are circumstances or reasons why it doesn't pencil. We hear this in housing all the time these days. Think of that in the context of how a standalone state entity would approach that, because you've got to raise capital, you've got to have reserves, and then you've got to figure out what your risk appetite is. Because when you're raising capital in the markets or utilizing state dollars, whatever it may be, there is an expectation of repayment. And that's why you set up those reserves to deal with some of those situations. So it introduces a whole underwriting process around risk that the bar when you're dealing with tax dollars or going to the market should be an expectation of repayment. Obviously, you can't rule out circumstances that may develop. You should not go into it thinking that it's okay if it doesn't pencil out there, you know, it's for the public good or whatever. I will tell you, there will be losses somewhere along the way, and if you. The appetite for those losses may not be very palatable if you gotta pay back your lenders, if you get the money from Wall Street, or as we talked about with Treasurer Petek early on and with Treasurer Pierce. You go too far beyond that 10%, that's your state's cash flow, which you use to pay bills. Now, obviously, you're still.
I wasn't making any point, I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, sorry, so that they get too far into those, my fault. Yeah,
But I think the obvious thing is that there has to be payment. Sometimes there could be repayment even if the project itself doesn't pencil, like the municipality. That decided it's in its interest to restore a floodplain upriver.
Yeah.
Upstream from where they are getting flooding, and I don't want to find, but that's exactly what's going on. So that's different than what the project pencils, as long as there's the reasonable expectation of repayment with the municipality can theoretically do. So I guess one possibility here is, you know, what you're talking about, or to actually think about this bill, it's not necessarily about a bank, or it's just how to get and have these issues we're trying to solve, and what are the possible mechanisms we could do either in a study or not.
Yeah.
So,
I think there's an example to, so in the case of 10%, the treasurers look for intermediaries where the money flows through, and that intermediary is the one that's going to guarantee the repayment to the treasurer's office. So it minimizes the risk, just as in.
Well, and we may hear more from folks that could potentially benefit from them.
Yeah.
The kinds of the gap in the market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're more than happy to help if you would help, if you identify those gaps, how we can help to close those gaps.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate your time.
And so we're gonna move to Mr. Sure. Have I said your name correctly?
Share.
Sure, okay, great, welcome from the treasurer's office.
Thank you very much. For the record, David Share, Deputy Treasurer. And I'd say in short, just jump right to the point on the bill here. We are certainly happy to conduct a study as outlined in the bill. And we would ask for a one-time appropriation to help us hire the staff and capacity we need to do that study well. I don't think we would make any advanced judgment on what that study might show as to the efficacy of the green bank or alternative models for climate infrastructure financing. Obviously, the treasurer's office does have within it some private infrastructure financing now. I would refer the committee if you have interest in some prior thought that has gone into it, emanating from our office. There's a January 2024 climate infrastructure financing study that the Vermont Treasurer's Office filed that was fairly extensive, and it does actually state that a green bank is something that could be looked at more at the time with great detail on the green bank idea, but it does have some discussion outlining some of the pros and cons that various stakeholders have identified with the idea. So you can, for further reading right now, if you're interested, that January 2024 study does have some additional information out.
And could you tell us a little bit about there's the 2.5% for climate infrastructure projects that the Treasurer's Office is doing right now? Can you tell us like the scope of what that is allowable for? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I think that, I mean, basically, as Mr. Delia pointed out, there are the way the 10% now 12.5% for Vermont financing generally works is a very sort of risk averse method of lending, such that we always do find intermediaries to guarantee the payback. And obviously, those intermediaries are heavily involved in selecting and deciding what they're going to be willing to accept that guarantee, what types of projects can be able to accept, what types of projects they want to accept that guarantee. And then, I apologize, I don't have in my head a list of the types of things that have been financed with that, but I can certainly come back to the committee or just submit
Send us
an overview of what has already been gone out under that 2.5% lending capacity.
Okay, great, that'd be fabulous.
Happy to-
I didn't think of that when we were chatting earlier, so
No problem.
thank you. Any questions for Mr. Shea? Yes.
I do, it's nice to
Hello.
see you.
Good to see you.
If we were to go the route that Mr. Delia suggested and just kind of say, hey, you guys, can you talk amongst yourselves and come back with recommendations? Not do a formal study, would you all have the capacity to participate in those conversations?
We certainly would be if they had the capacity to participate in those conversations.
And what about facilitating them? Or would you rather not be asked to facilitate unless you get an appropriation?
Where the line is to when we're being asked to actually run a study, it could get a little squishy here.
Yeah,
I think I want to look at language
fair enough.
driving our responsibilities.
Fair enough.
For representation.
That makes sense.
Okay. Great, any further questions at this point?
No.
Okay,
Okay.
super, thank you so much. Okay, before we adjourn for the day, any conversation thoughts folks want to share either about this bill or S224? I mean, we'll hear more.
Yes.
But yes,
So other than the word green, why is that in our, isn't that more of a finance initiative as far as studies for financial? It's multi-committee first.
I think that's fair. I think I would guess that there was a choice that probably had to be made about where it would go, and here it is. I mean, it's also similar to like, why did we end up with S138 about commercial pace? That kind of thing, could have gone to multiple places. Probably both bills will go to finance if we pass them.
Sure.
Yeah, seems fair, so.
We might want to have VEDA in,
Yes,
because I think they do some of the, in the bond bank. They do some of this already, and it might be interesting to hear how they're doing.
Still living.
And I mean,
Yes.
is your concept of a green bank like a lending institution that lends money out for green infrastructure projects, and then there are repayments, and it's sort of like almost like a revolving loan fund type concept, or is it broader than that?
Well, so that is, the thing is, I'm open, and that, the first thing you described is what I was starting with. And particularly at least, and this is my perception, and we can hear more about this, but in my perception of some of the gaps in the market are particularly around transition technology, so not just mitigation of climate work, but rather, or I guess I should say, it's not adaptation. There's entities that are doing the adaptation. And I think there's some products out there that are about transition technologies, but I'm very interested in accelerating that, and particularly leveraging more private funds to accelerate the transition.
For state government, for nonprofits, for individuals, so
For individuals,
businesses, for-
yeah, individuals and businesses, I think it could be any or all of the above. And this was actually brought to me by folks in the farming community,
Mhm.
which is why agriculture is specifically called out in there, that they're having some difficulty with access to lending.
So
So
it might also, I mean, I don't know how much time we want to take on this, but
Yeah.
because we have a lot of other things.
also, yes.
Because there are some, it might be interesting to hear from some entities who tried to do or have successfully done this work and how they managed to piece together the work, the rating and blending of funds, which is like the hot topic term. Because I can think one in my district in particular that's done quite a bit of, for a nonprofit organization, and I don't know exactly how they financed it all.
Sure.
But that could also be something that the study group or the informal group, whatever we decide, can talk to people too, so
Mhm.
depending on how much.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how much time we definitely, so, okay, any other thoughts or comments on this or S 224?